Thank you. Please be seated, everybody. I hope this will be a panel where we'll get some ideas of what the private sector can and the philanthropic sector can do both on its own and in networks, and what we need to have public support for in order for the private work to go forward. One of the most interesting announcements, if you were listening carefully when Mayor Reed talked, is how much private sector investment he'd gotten for infrastructure once there was a comparatively modest public seeding of it. And we need to talk about this. 5 years ago, I wrote a book in which I attempted to catalog how America ranked compared to other countries across a whole range of economic and social indicators and what it would take to do that. A lot of those things haven't changed, but I think it's worth sort of going over where we are. So first, I want to start with Ian Bremmer first. As a political scientist and someone who's written extensively about our position in the world, how would you briefly, and as of 2016, characterize our relative strengths and weaknesses in terms of our long-term competitiveness?
That's a tough question from you. The strengths are pretty clear. If you're Chinese and you're worth over $1 million, you want to bring it to the States. If you have the ability to get your kid educated anywhere in the world, you want to bring them to an American university. Shirley can talk about that. We're the world's largest food producer, the largest energy producer, and despite all the challenges that you talked about in your opening speech all over the world, the geopolitical environment being neighbors of Canada, Mexico, and a bunch of fish, actually pretty good for the United States. So I think that it's very obvious in terms of the strength of the dollar, the strength of the market, the strength of our nation globally. Those things haven't gone away. Briefly after the 2008 financial crisis, there was a time when the Chinese started thinking maybe the Americans aren't so strong, maybe we need to move away. They're not saying that now. But in terms of the weakness, I guess the single thing I would worry about most is the division within the United States. I woke up this morning and saw the headlines for the New York Post and the New York Daily News, both of the covers, and you wouldn't think you were in the same country. Half of this country is talking about guns, and half of it is talking about radical Islam, and there's no in between. That's the kind of divisiveness that we saw in France after their November bombings. It's not what we saw in the United States after 9/11. And I know this is an election period, and I know it's a particularly polarized election period, but my God, I hope we get through this, because I know that our allies looking around the world are wondering what we stand for and how committed we are to them. And the single thing that has been most important to America's notion as an indispensable nation is that that answer has been very, very clear to both our allies and our antagonists around the world. I do worry that it's not so clear today.
I did not write that for him. Shirley, you've had an amazing career in government, in the private sector, the distinguished physicist. Now you lead one of our leading research universities. What's your take on it? I'll ask you the same thing. What are our, given where the world is today and where America is, what are our major assets? What are our major liabilities?
Well, our major assets, in fact, are our people. There's no innovation without innovators. Other countries are emulating us, and from where I sit and where other university presidents sit, people want to come here. They want to understand what that secret sauce is, so they send their greatest talents or potential talents here. And so I think the divisiveness that Ian talked about can sometimes, and a lot of times, deflect us from understanding that we really do have to come together. that we have to welcome people from around the world, but that we have to educate our own people and educate them in new ways and believe that talent is everywhere. And therefore, it is silly not to develop and exploit that talent. Having said that, I think universities are really important laboratories and platforms for bringing people together, because we naturally do. People come. For having people learn from each other at a point where they're really trying to define who they are as individuals against who they are in a community. But it is a community that throws people together into a multi-generational cauldron, a multicultural one. And so that's why it's important that we have representation and participation, more importantly, of those who are from traditional underrepresented groups. I call them the underrepresented majority when you think about women and underrepresented minorities. But really, it's about all of us, and that's what we try to reinforce at the university. And so we have ways that we respond when things happen, such as what happened in Orlando, happened in Paris. And I remember that I called a broad-based town meeting when the killings occurred in Paris. And I talked about our humanity, about our solidarity with the French people. And one of our students, who was a Muslim student, got up and gave a very emotional plea, really, that we remember that people are affected everywhere, and that those kinds of killings go on everywhere. And he made me do a second take. And we also had invited the supervisory agent from our local, from the Albany-based FBI. And so it was a very interesting discussion to have their take on it. And they were some of the most understanding people about how you have to treat people, even as they understood their primary responsibility in terms of protection and investigation when things happen. So I think it's a privilege for people to be able to continue to come to a university, and we're questioning so much of what that value is because we think of it in terms of jobs, and we're going to be talking about, I hope, the importance of universities as well as other enterprises in that arena. But first and foremost, it connects us. And the experience in the university, whether one is teaching, helping to run it, or especially if one is a student.
One of the things that strikes me, I'm going to ask Sandy a question that we're not prepared for, and he may never speak to me again. With Coca-Cola, from the point of view of the work I've done over the years with the Clinton Foundation, has been so important because you got the best supply chain I ever saw. Right? You can deliver things to the last mile. And that's been a big part of the work that the health work that our Health Access Initiative does, with AIDS medicine to fight TB and malaria and everything. One of the things that strikes me is that we are, in America, really isolated from each other and each other's lives and perceptions in a way that is different. That is, we're all interconnected virtually, except we don't read the same stuff. And one of the reasons that there's so much road rage in America is that there are a lot of people who think all their tomorrows are going to be just like yesterday's, and they don't think that all these exciting things can ever reach them. So you have, for example, this epidemic of a prescription drug and heroin abuse in America that is most concentrated, for the first time in my lifetime, in small towns and rural areas, because that's where the most economic and social despair is. The people that live within the aura of universities or the aura of cities can imagine their lives getting better and tend to be less polarized in their views, I think. So how can America do a better job, in your view, of ending polarization by creating a community where people are aware of each other, see each other, and actually help each other grow their way out of their social problems and go their way into their economic potential? It's a huge problem, and it's a delivery problem in many ways. Americans, no matter what happened in Orlando yesterday, are less racist, sexist, and homophobic than they have ever been. Our remaining vice is that we don't like to be around anyone who disagrees with us. It's a universal right to left discrimination impulse, and I think it's really paralyzing the politics of the country. So anyway, how do we, if you were thinking like Coca-Cola thinks in delivering Cokes to the remotest villages on earth, how would you bring more opportunity and therefore more community to small town and rural America?
Well, Mr. President, I want to pick up where our great Mayor Kasim Reed did and welcome everyone to Atlanta, to our corporate home. In many ways, this city and the innovative story of the multicultural journey of Atlanta sets a fine example for that kind of innovation and that sharing, and the way people, much in the model of the Clinton Global Initiative, have brought business and civil society and government together to talk about issues and to ask questions, aren't we really better together? And it gets to what fundamentally America's all about. America's secret formula. We have a secret formula at Coke that was born 130 years ago. Well, part of our country's secret formula is our diversity. It's immigration. It's the opportunity that's created when people that are different from each other come together and ask the question, what could we do if we actually work together? And the Coca-Cola business worldwide is simultaneously the most global business. We operate in 207 countries, but it's also local because we do business through franchisees that are part of their nation, or in America, part of the community. And recently we bought our largest bottler in the United States, and we did something different, which is we bound together to create the efficiencies, the scale we need in information technology and manufacturing and serving big customers. But then we refranchised to local owners again. And now the Coca-Cola system in the United States will be over a third owned by minority and women-owned capital. And that connection to the local market, together woven in a business strategy, but taking advantage of the genius of the communities around this country, is where our growth is, and it's working incredibly well. And so to answer your question about far-flung communities, I think what we have to do is continue to set an example. You spoke in your opening comments about the potential of a future vision liberating us from the challenges we're in today. And as a business who operates at the goodwill of Americans every day, we don't need, this country can survive without our products, although we're changing them rapidly to try to make that not so. But in a world of less sugar, of naturalness, of sustainable products, our company is capable, because of our local relationships, to change, hopefully at the speed and maybe a tiny bit faster than the market. And the fundamental factual prosperity of that integration and collaboration, we hope and believe, and this is true in small town America as much as it is in big cities, although I think Atlanta is such a wonderful example. But that's where the growth is. That's what makes America great. And as an example, I think our business is certainly a reflection of that.
Let me say that I'll do a little flacking here. You know, we had two different, my foundation works on the problem of childhood obesity, and we tried to make a deal several years ago with Coca-Cola and PepsiCo in the lead, working together, along with the other major soft drink and fruit juice manufacturers to reduce the total calories going to kids in schools through drinks. And we were, to put it mildly, somewhere between laughed at and ridiculed. 2 independent surveys showed, that their voluntary deal with their competitors reduced by 90% the total calories going to our kids in their schools through drinks. And they did it in a way that enabled them to be a sustainable business. In other words, to find a way to make money in another way, in a more healthy way. And I just want to thank you for that. I think God only knows how many people that's going to help, and you deserve a lot of credit for it. So, Jewel, great name. You got a wholly different perspective on this. You're basically a tech entrepreneur. So tell us how you think your experience could be relevant to creating more entrepreneurs and more small businesses, because, let me parenthesis, if you look at how the American economy has or has not picked up from its high-performing days in the last decade of the 20th century, we were never out of the top 5 in small business formation. And today we are not in the top 10. There are many reasons for this, and it could be just still hangover from the crash and the cat on the coal stove phenomenon. But how you got your money and how you started and how you're doing is highly relevant, because we can't hope to maximize the potential of the American economy unless we lead the world in small business formation. So talk a little about it and how you think it might be relevant for other people.
Sure. So, I am a small business owner, a tech entrepreneur based here in Atlanta, Georgia, and have been very intentional about basing my business here for a few reasons. For access to large corporations. We know Atlanta has 18 Fortune 500 companies, and many of those that I'm trying to win as my customers. I have had the experience of raising money, raising capital for my business. And that's one thing that's been a challenge, and it's been something that's incredibly difficult, not just because I'm based here in Atlanta, and Atlanta isn't as well known as Silicon Valley or New York for giving or investing in tech specifically, but also as a Black woman, as a 26-year-old Black woman in tech, it's also been challenging in raising capital for my business. But what it has helped me do is build a more sustainable business, because we've had to get creative around how are we funding the business and looking at, okay, we need to generate revenue as opposed to leaning or waiting on investors to come into that. So it's interesting hearing the perspectives of large corporations, because obviously that's where we want to become one. But the journey to get there is challenging when you don't have the capital to continue to grow your team, and you have to continue to prove out the value of the technology. And that's where I am. I'm in the thick of that right now. So it's been really, really interesting to sort of deal with both the side of convincing investors to believe in the business, as well as convincing large corporations to take a chance on a small startup.
So did you get all your money from investors, or some of it from bank loan, or how did you do it?
Yeah, so to get the business started, I bootstrapped. So I saved my own money, and that was kind of the first seed in. So, about $40,000 from my personal savings. And as at the time, 23-year-old, that was a pretty challenging, if you can imagine. And then after that, I took out a loan. So I decided, again, in order for this to get off the ground, to build a technology that's really never existed before, and the purpose that we're using it, and just to give everyone some information, my company is called Part Pick, and we do visual search for replacement parts. So we've built computer vision and machine learning technology to recognize anything. And more specifically nails and bolts and screws and those types of things, so we can make it really easy to help you in a repair project. But in order to build that, obviously, you need money, and you need really smart and talented people. So situating myself in Atlanta has allowed me to tap into the resources at Georgia Tech. I was able to recruit a team of PhDs, and specifically a Black woman who was finishing up her PhD in electrical and computer engineering to help me in building. And I was able to do that through kind of bartering and making, giving her a perception of what will become, because I didn't have enough money to really give her a competitive offer. And along with that, it's really just been using what I can and being kind of scrappy about building something. But yeah, it's certainly been, it's been an interesting journey. And how do you put together the pieces to build a big business when it's just hard, it's difficult.
Did you figure it out, or did you have somebody helping you?
It's definitely been a combination of reading and reading the stories of other business owners who maybe have come from modest beginnings, and then it's also been mentors. And I didn't finish the answer to your last question, but the first part of the capital came from myself, my co-founder, loan, and then I had some people who just believed in me and wrote me the first few checks. And then once we started growing and proving out more about our business, we were able to raise investment capital from angel investors and a few VCs. But honestly, that came from outside of Atlanta, so I had to get on a plane. My largest investor is in Montana, of all places. So, yeah. So, and that was, that was sending an email inquiring about them becoming a customer and them looking at our website and saying, hey, this is really innovative technology. We want to be a part of it. And so my co-founder and I got on a plane and went to Montana, Billings, Montana. Never thought I would go there, but that's where people are interested in really seeing how this business, our business, can revolutionize their industry. So it's a family that owned fastener companies. And they wanted to understand more about how technology can change their business. And so that really sort of helped to validate what we were doing through the industry, and that helped me to close my first round of funding.
That's good. That's good. Good. Shirley, let's go back to something you talked about, Shirley. You talked about the role of the university in growing the economy and innovating, starting new businesses. I think most Americans still don't know the staggering extent to which universities contribute to the private economy, particularly in jobs that are growing in the future. But so why don't you say something about that and what you think we could do to accelerate it?
Okay, let me pick up on two things, because I'd like to come at it from two ways, and I'll do this as succinctly as I can. But thinking about Jules' journey, we try to have our students work on what we call the hard problems. So one of them has to do with sustainable packaging. So we had two of our students, one in business, one in engineering, who actually started a company. It's called Ecovative Design, and it does packaging that is environmentally friendly, ultimately biodegradable. Nonetheless, it can go into dashboards of cars as part of the padding, as well as being a shipping material for computer products and other things. So they developed this idea in something called the Inventor Studio. So it actually came out of a classroom experience. But then, how did they proceed? And it's about being innovative and how one gets support. So they started with an on-campus competition, which they won. And then they went on to a larger competition. And then they went to one in London, and they won quite a bit of money. And ultimately to something called the Picnic, which was in, I think it was in Denmark. And they won even more money. And each time they put the money back into their business. And they did it because they believed in it, and it showed proof of concept. So that is one element of how things can occur. That's why I said it depends upon people. And so these young men were enterprising, but they not only have the innovative technology, because it depends on a unique enzymatic process they created to do this, and now they use broader agricultural waste to build what they build. But they also had innovation of process, innovation of funding. But a second and a broader example, and this relates to something, Mr. President, that I think you would relate to in what you try to do, which is to bring people together across sectors. And universities have a big role in that. And one example has to do with the use of high-performance computing. And you say, well, high-performance computing, what is that all about? Well, enterprises have to transform what they do. So some of that can be process improvements, whether it's in a manufacturing context or some other context. These are hard problems to be able to model a true industrial process. But universities can help, and we do that. So we have the supercomputer at the university. It's very powerful. It's a petascale computer. But small businesses use it. And our faculty work with them to, in fact, help them improve their actual processes and therefore their products. And it makes them more efficient and more competitive. And so that helps the small businesses. But then we work with large ones, and they use the same kind of computational capability. But then there are consortia that exist, and there's one on new revolutionary textiles and fabrics to build in sensors that can detect things about bacterial presence, about body temperature. And that consortium is led by, another university. I don't usually mention my alma mater, MIT, but it involves 89. Well, I am the president of Rensselaer. It involves 89 other enterprises, companies, and with some input from the federal government in this case. And so it's part of a network of manufacturing innovation institutes that have been created. But it's rejuvenating the public-private partnership with universities. And so, to me, they're the things that can occur on a very large scale, but it involves bringing people together the way you do. But then there are things that can occur directly out of a smaller scale if we keep our minds on the fact that innovation comes from people.
Well, I want to talk about a couple of related things here. You spend a lot of money, Coca-Cola does, giving people scholarships and support for education. So I want to ask it, when you're doing all this, starting this business, do you have any college debt?
Yes, I did. Well, I was fortunate enough to get a full ride to Howard University. But at the end of my college career, I found myself needing to take out a loan because I was ambitious and I wanted to finish quickly. So I had to take more classes to do that. And so I took out a loan, and that's something that I am still paying right now. So definitely it's challenging to fund a business at the beginning of my business and then also be paying student loans. Yes.
The reason I ask that is I'm even more impressed that you finance your business if you had a student loan. But it means you really got to have investors, because it's almost impossible to get a bank loan if you got a student loan.
Absolutely.
So maybe we'll start with Shirley, but anybody can chime in on this. We have an accumulated, I actually think this is a much more solvable problem going forward if we could make it possible for every young person to get in and through undergraduate education essentially debt-free with minor changes. But there is a massive accumulated debt here. And the average is about $27,000, but people that go to medical school may owe $200,000 or more. The worst example I've heard is I got a letter from a guy who was immensely proud of his wife, who was a doctor, but she only wanted to do public service. So she kept doing these internships and everything, and for 6 months at a time, so she could never pay back her loan, because we don't have the National Health Service Corps anymore, which existed in the 1970s. where you got rid of your medical school debt if you did 4 or 5 years in public service. So her loan got up to $400,000 because a college loan is the only loan you cannot refinance, which I think is insane. I talked to a woman the other day I bought a pair of jeans from. It's somebody I've done business with for 10 years. Her son's graduated from college with a student loan at 9%, and she just refinanced her home at under 4%. There's something wrong with this picture. So Shirley, what do you think we should do about this, the accumulated student debt that's weighing on Jules' generation?
Well, I think there are a couple of things. Thank you for the question. So let's look at what exists and then what can exist. So there are students who graduate with too much debt. Now, our students graduate with debt. They get really great jobs, so our default rate is essentially nothing. That doesn't mean they don't graduate with debt, however. So I think we need to think back through and rejuvenate some things that used to exist, and you alluded to one of them, which has to do with loan forgiveness for public service. But here's another, which is very interesting. We actually have an immigration type of visa. I think it's called the EB-5 program, where if a person comes to this country and invests a certain amount of money, excuse me?
I think it's $500,000. Yeah.
Right, $500,000 toward some business enterprise, that can accelerate their getting the kind of more permanent visa here. So why wouldn't we take an idea like that, and you have a young entrepreneur, and have a progressive kind of approach that allows a certain forgiveness of the loan if they are in the process of creating an enterprise. And I'm not saying necessarily all of it forgiven in the immediate moment, but some kind of a progressive scheme. Because what are they doing? They're not only ultimately taking care of themselves and becoming financially viable, they're creating opportunity for other people. And in the end, that is what we want, don't we? And so to take ideas that we use to attract people here, people who have talent, Moxie Enterprise, but to use it here for people who have talent, Moxie Enterprise. Then I think, as well, loan rates need to change. We have to view that as an investment in our future. And then finally, we've got to come back to the compact. A lot of issues exist as well because our great public universities don't get the support that they really should have. In the end, if you run a university, you do have to pay people. You do have to pay your bills. And so it does take input. But I think universities are beginning to develop new and more efficient business models, I know we have, to try to take costs out where we can. The use of new technologies to teach students and reach them in different ways, online approaches, the so-called flipped classrooms, things that can be used to accelerate students' progress through the university. All of those things have to come into play. And so it really is a portfolio approach. But I think to start with, in a way, a rejuvenation of ideas that have existed before, but to take ideas that have been put to use in other arenas, such as the EB-5 type approach, and use them relative to higher education funding. So all of those things, I think, can come into play. Plus, to think about how do students begin that journey along the educational pipeline. Not every student wants to or is ready to go into a 4-year college or university. And we have an articulation agreement, particularly with one particular community college, So if they go through a certain program, they'll come in. And even though we're a very selective institution, these students do extremely well. But some of them weren't ready either financially, or they weren't ready maybe from a maturity point of view, even though they were brilliant. And so there are lots of new approaches we need to think about in terms of what kinds of articulations need to exist and how we bridge from one level to the next. And finally, portable education that's more targeted, portable certifications that using the very technologies we love so much. And then to have those allow students, people, to continuously learn. So it's not just a static set of skills people need, particularly when technology changes so fast and things move as quickly as they do. People have to be in a continuous learning mode. And so, how many of you have this? I know you got it. And so, that's an educational tool. But it's also one you should know why it works the way it works.
Yep. I just want to point out the reason I've raised this is it's something we're thinking about. That the younger you go in America, the lower our ranking compared to other countries in the percentage of people who have four-year college degrees. And it is absolutely true that not everybody needs one, and I think we need to redignify skills training in this country and prepare people for good jobs that are needed. But it's also true that there's a lot of untapped ability out there. I'm from New York, and we have one of America's most creative university-prison partnerships in Bard College, and one of the Bard College prison debate teams beat Harvard and West Point in the last 16 months in debate. So you want to keep the university system flowing, and when we're not in the top 10 anymore in the percentage of our people, ages 25 to 34 with four-year degrees, it bothers me, and I think cost has a lot to do with it. And I agree that the state universities have not been adequately funded we were at Berkeley, for CGIU, and only 13% of their revenues come from the state anymore. And now they can make a lot of money because of the same way you do, all your scientific advances and everything. But we have, here the leader of Miami-Dade, and Donna Shalala was president of the University of Miami. We've got all these different kinds of examples. But we really need to quit fooling with this and resolve this debt issue, and then give people a path to get out of college debt-free, in my opinion, so we can have more people like Jewel. And it's really important. And for the already existing debt, another thing I think we should consider is treating the big debt, not paid off by public service, like a home mortgage. Let people pay for it over 20 years as a fixed percentage of their income. You can already do that with the government-insured loans. Absolutely. But more people are borrowing outside the system, and it's absolutely crazy. Everybody in this audience, your age, has at least a 50% chance to live to be 100 years old, and without the threat of Alzheimer's or other dementia because of biomedical advances. That means that your education, which got you in this chair, is more of a lifetime asset than any home you will ever own. And I believe if what you had to pay were limited, no matter how much you owed, to 10% of your after-tax income per month, which is essentially what the federal loan does, it would make a big difference. And we've got to do this. To go back to what you said, I agree that political gridlock's a problem, but the consequences of political gridlock are that we're 16th in the world in the percentage of our people with access to affordable broadband. And South Korea's first. That's pretty embarrassing since we started here. That we are not in the top 10 in the percentage of our younger Americans with four-year college degrees. And I could just go through example after example. We rank first or second in the world in the capacity to generate energy from the sun and the wind. How come it's Germany that generates 87% of its electricity from the sun and the wind on a good day? a lot of this stuff is we do have a still like incredibly vibrant university economy, university generated economy, and basically science and technology base. But we really need to think about this, and we need to think about how technology can bring economic opportunity to small towns and rural areas. Because these people, that's where a lot of the rage on the right and the left is in America, because nothing ever gets better for them. And there are 2 counties in West Virginia where the number one source of male income is a disability check. So that's what we got. We got to really think about this, because a lot of these places are physically but not virtually isolated from the rest of us.
Well, I think that therein lies a great opportunity, because, in fact, with new approaches to manufacturing, with additive manufacturing, with actually computer-driven manufacturing, one has the opportunity to place manufacturing where people live. And so it doesn't all require that everyone go to the big factory that has, 3,000 employees all there, and therefore then that's near some metropolitan area. And so I think, again, it requires, I think, a partnership with the corporate arena for them to partner with communities directly, but also even with universities, but on new ways to get done what they get done, on how do you move goods, but in fact maybe you don't have to move them, because using the virtual, the digital fusion with the physical, one can design and manufacture. And so that's just one example, but more of that needs to happen for these types of communities.
I just want to say the nature of the public-private partnership and what both bring is so important here. Yes, the entrepreneurship, the know-how, the technology from the private sector, but the interest in employing the people, not in the private sector. And you make those supply chains shorter, and you bring the manufacturing in place, but that doesn't necessarily come with manufacturing jobs. And I thought President Clinton's point at the beginning when he asked about supply chain, and he said that the one disease we still have in this country, which we have a lot of, is we have people that we want to be with people that we're like. Well, we like things that are right in front of us. And, we're told by social networks that we must like them. You have to have public-private partnerships. You have to nudge people to get them out of what they necessarily like when it isn't always what's going to be great for them. And that doesn't mean authoritarian diktat, but it does mean a public-private partnership in areas that we haven't maybe been so comfortable being in before, but with the rise of technology, we're going to have to start getting a little more comfortable.
So where would that be?
Yeah, I was just going to add that I think that business in the United States, and particularly the changing world economy and the global competitors that we face, as we move forward, we have an opportunity to take the strategic strengths of education in the United States, tap into businesses willing to invest, and then as we contemplate things like immigration reform and corporate tax reform, where America's companies today are struggling because capital can form better in other countries than it does here. And while Atlanta's story about foreign companies opening here is good for the city of Atlanta, we, all of us, have a stake in America's business. And I just think there's an opportunity to put the key investments in infrastructure and education forward as a part of a new strategy for growth in America that's born of the basic building blocks of what makes this country great. And our business certainly is a microcosm of that as we go around the world. But in the end, in the past 12 to 18 months, one of our healthiest businesses has been right here at home. So I think there's an opportunity, as has been said, that we all can work better together. And ultimately, the American opportunity continues to be a great way to generate resources for investment as long as we have growth at the same time as values working together.
Yeah, we haven't said much about this infrastructure thing. There's a cute sign here that says, Sandy needs to get to the airport. Please stop. So I'm not going to make him miss his plane. But On the way at the door, remember, this panel started with Kasim Reed talking about a public-private investment in infrastructure. And we talked about the work that the public sector unions did with their pension funds investing in infrastructure. We've got to do more of this because interest rates are below inflation, and we've got $1 trillion plus shortage of infrastructure investment, and we are missing a massive, massive opportunity, which would, and infrastructure is not just roads and bridges, ports and airports, although it's important. It's also, Flint, Michigan's not the only place in America where kids have elevated lead levels in their blood. It's also whether everybody that lives in Montana, where you just visited, has access to affordable broadband. If you put every Native American tribe, they're the poorest Americans. Native Americans who live on tribal lands without gambling are the poorest Americans. If you gave them all good transmission lines, they could be making a killing selling their solar and wind energy. And if you gave them universal access to broadband, they'd be in the national and international economy. We got to figure this out. And in the middle of this are all these people, I will say again, these people with all this drug epidemic is concentrated in small town and rural America. And it is, yes, a public health problem, but it's also a psychological problem. People die of a broken heart when they think they can't make tomorrow better than today. And so we've got to figure out how to do that. But, you know, when I'm sitting there listening to you thinking, you know, I shouldn't worry so much. I'm sitting there just watching you say, well, you know, if you could do what you did and you're 26, we're going to be fine. But the truth is, we're going to be fine if we make it possible for everybody your age to maximize their opportunity. That's basically where we are now. And so thank you all. Thank you.